persevere through some challenges. Rand Timmerman, everybody.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you for joining us. And why don't you start off by letting people know where they can find you? I always like starting with that.
Sure. I have a website at randtimmerman.com, and they can email me at rand.timmerman@gmail.com. And actually, Kevin, if they Google, quote, a spiritual passage, unquote, the title of my book about hiking the Appalachian Trail, it pops right up.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Or if they Google my name, it's a bunch of stuff pops up.
Fantastic. Easy to find and easy to communicate with. I always like that for the audience. That's fantastic. Just on the topic of that, we're going to get into it later, but is the Appalachian Trail, am I saying that correctly to start with? Appalachian?
Yes, it's the Appalachian Trail. It's the longest footpath only trail in the whole world.
Really?
2,200 miles. It goes from Katahdin Mountain in Springer Mountain in Georgia.
Okay.
2,200 miles through 14 states and ends up at Katahdin Mountain in Maine.
Goes over 14 states?
14 states, yep.
Oh my goodness.
Yep, and it goes over 600 mountains. 300 of them are named. Every state has a bear mountain.
Yeah. What do you mean by only 300? Or did you say 600 are named or 300 are named?
300 of them are named. Yeah.
So there's unnamed mountains?
Yeah. Yeah, they have every kind of mountain you could almost think of in the whole world. And Washington Mountain in New Hampshire is famous for the highest winds ever recorded in North America, 243 miles per hour. Gets snow every month. You might as well be in the Alps,
Yeah.
Yep.
What are the temperature? The temperatures must be vastly different along that trail, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. You're usually, if you were at the bottom of a mountain that you're on, the differential can be 10 degrees easy, depending.
Mm-hmm. Elevations are very different throughout it. There's a lot of climbing, a lot of descent. To get people to understand very quickly what we're getting into here. Yes. Wow.
There's 100,000 feet of elevation changes. That's almost 500,000
oh my goodness.
Going up or down. It's crazy.
Oh, wow. And so Everest is known for like the ascent and not the distance. Is that correct? Is that how that would differ from this? Because I know I've heard about Everest a lot, not the Appalachian Trail.
No, it's not on the Appalachian Trail. Mount Everest is it's like 24,000 feet high. You're way above the oxygen. The highest mountain on the Appalachian Trail is like a little less than 7,000 feet, I think. I don't know what the average is. About 3 million people hike on the Appalachian Trail every year, Kevin. Mm-hmm. About 3,000 roughly are through hikers trying to do the whole deal. And of that, about 500 make it. It's around 17%. So it's a real challenge for sure.
Wow. Yeah, I don't think I could do that, but I don't know if I'm allowed to say that with having you on this podcast today. I think we're gonna have to rechange the mindset there. But anyways, thank you so much for coming on. It's a real honor. I was reading some of your background, and it's truly impressive. Some of the stories that some people can take out of listening to you. So thank you once again. And going right back, fighting in the Vietnam War, is that correct?
Yes. Yep. I enlisted in the Marine Corps when I was 19.
Wow.
Yep. I was born in upstate New York. A lot of people think of New York as being all cities, but I grew up in a very agricultural area. Probably 4 counties, 5,000 square miles. Very rural, more cows than people, a lot of dairy farms. Now it's kind of more crops, but in those days it was dairy farms and, cheese plants and stuff like that, all agriculture related. Well, half the boys that came to school where I grew up had manure on their boots.
Wow. That's not what you think about when you think New York. And
Yep.
my perspective obviously has changed a little bit, learning a little bit about geography and learning about New York itself. But yeah, a lot of people would be surprised. Like even I believe New York's top export doesn't have anything to do with banking or city. It has to do still fancy, but I believe diamonds is one of their top exports. But I was a little caught off guard. So you learn something new every day, and perspective definitely changes with age a little bit. But leading up to enlisting, is this something that you always thought that you were going to do, or was this a something that made you want to do it? How did that process happen leading up to it?
Well, I became a warrior and a patriot, I guess would be the one way. At 5 years old, you become aware. And when I became aware and looked around, I thought, we're screwed.
Wow.
My dad, I remember Christmas Day in 1951. I was 5 years old, and we had a tree, and there was a few bulbs on it, and there was a wagon, a push pedal wagon that my dad had gotten from the dump and painted it red.
Mm-hmm.
And that was it. And my little sister, who was 3, cried the whole day because she wanted a doll.
Mm.
And I'll never forget, Kevin, the looks on my parents' faces when the dismay and the pain. My dad was standing there on crutches. He was a Mustang pilot in World War II.
Wow.
At the beginning of World War II. And he came home, married my mom, had me and my brother, and got polio. Probably in our village of 2,500 people, I'm going to say it was at least 100 people that had polio.
Wow.
People don't realize how devastating polio was. My dad had 2 cousins. One was 19 and one was 20. They got polio, and on the same day they died because they couldn't breathe. My dad somehow managed to get to the Children's Hospital in Utica, which in those days would have been about a 2-hour drive from where we live. I don't know how it happened. Nobody ever talked about this stuff, right?
Yeah.
And he spent a year in the hospital, 8 months in an iron lung. I don't know if you know what that is, but it's basically a barrel with your head sticking out of it. It's, on its side, and it's pumping air to make you breathe. Otherwise, you can't breathe. He came out of that paralyzed from the waist down. I don't know what kind of a man he was before that, but I know what kind of man he was after that. He was a tough guy, man. Tough guy. Very hard worker. Extremely hard worker, and but the medical bills had to be unreal. So we were very poor. I went to bed hungry a lot. I think I was a teenager when I finally got clothes somebody else hadn't worn out, shoes that didn't have holes in the bottom. Like living on dandelions and potatoes and stuff like that.
Yeah, but wow, what a experience and what a history there. I mean, wow, but getting through that is the story. Wow.
So I had to be with him a lot when he wasn't at work to get stuff. I was kind of the gopher, but the good part of it was we were surrounded by farms, so I could walk across the street and walk into a barn and say, you got anything I can do? And I could shovel the manure and take it out on a spreader and drive a tractor at 12 years old and spread it and come back and give me a quarter. So there was a lot of good aspects to it too. I got involved in the Boy Scouts. Mm-hmm. All my uncles were World War II vets. One of them was, D-Day. And another one was a bomber gunner, belly gunner. They were tough guys and they never talked about the war, but I don't know. I came from a warrior class. I had no idea what that meant at the time, but
yeah, it sounds like it was around. It was around and small town. I mean, it sounds like it's a good thing, though. It sounds like that provided a lot of support. When you needed it to be able to walk on another farm.
My
you hear about
grandfather,
it all the time, and you see it in cities. People living on the streets. So at least the family and the community was there for you. It's beautiful.
yeah, my grandfather had bought a bunch of land, and he gave each daughter. He had 5 daughters and 1 son. They gave each daughter, when they got married, an acre of land, roughly. So we were all right there. My grandfather lived right behind us, and I had uncles and aunts and cousins on each. I mean, it was like a tribe.
Yeah. Wow.
I got very involved in the Boy Scouts. I was an Eagle Scout and a Vigil, which is the highest ranking scout there is. It's above the Eagle.
Congratulations.
So I was all involved. A lot of that was just to get the heck out of the house. But
yeah, well, it's good to keep busy. When things aren't going great, it's great to be out in the community. So that's a great decision. And I mean that ties into going and serving your country. And look at the benefits of look at these benefits, right? And like everybody benefited from that. So thank you very much for your service. And why don't we talk about that? Being a veteran now of war, how do you hear all these stories? How do you feel treated by society? If I was to ask a big question.
You mean when we came back?
Yeah, like in general. Is there anything? Do you feel like there's any problems there being a veteran?
No, I was proud to be a veteran. I was proud to enlist in the Marine Corps. I had gone off to college, the first member of our family. My brother, who was a year behind me, enlisted in the Army right out of high school, and he was in Vietnam he was a machine gunner on a helicopter when I was in college. And but I'm working as a janitor midnight to 8 every morning, and I had 2 other part-time jobs. One was a pin setter in a bowling alley. That was a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. And I'm struggling. I was getting decent grades, but I had no money. I didn't know what I wanted to be. I changed my major every semester, and finally the third one
I did that as well.
The third one, I went to psychiatry psychology because I knew I was a nut job.
Hey, I think that's quite common for people to flip around, and then they end up getting to the psychology, and either they love it or hate it, and then they go right to the engineering and accounting right after, if that's too much for them.
Well, my
very relatable.
Yeah, my transition was a little different. I kind of knew I had a problem with alcohol the first time I drank it. I really, really liked it a lot, and it got totally wasted. And my friend, who weighed twice as much as I did, I probably drank more than he did, and he ended up in the hospital. I ended up admitted to my father what happened. But so anyway, in college, I'm struggling and lost, and I would save up my change and go out like once a month and get drunk. And one weekend, I got drunk, and Monday morning when the owner came back into the bar, I'm on the pool table. I'm the only one in there. I was passed out on the pool table, and he came in, turned the radio on, started cleaning stuff up, and they were talking about 1st Marine Division being in Vietnam. Yeah. And I sat up on that pool table and swung my legs around. He came over and was swabbing the floor underneath it. He never said a word to me, but I could tell he didn't want me there. And I had made the decision. I walked out. A month later, I'm in the War Memorial in Syracuse, New York, swearing to defend my country against enemies, foreign and domestic. And 9 months later, I'm in a rice paddy thinking I might have made a big mistake.
Oh, wow.
And I'm in the 1st Marine Division.
So alcohol was, so college and alcohol was before enlisting, or was that leading up to the war when you did enlist? Just so I can understand the timeline a little bit. Well,
I graduated from high school in 1964. I went to college at Oswego State. It was a state university until February of 1966. I enlisted in March of 1966, and I was in Vietnam in October of 1966.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was there 13 months.
And alcohol started to become a problem right before that.
Oh, I kind of knew it was, the good part of that, Kevin, was the first time I got drunk, I was 13. And it was life-changing for me. It was unbelievable. I thought I turned into Clint Eastwood. I
Really?
had never felt that way before my whole life. It just made me feel I'm 5'8". I weigh 110 pounds. I'm skinnier than heck. I got clothes on with patches, shoes with holes in them, and I turned into Clint Eastwood, 6'4", handsome, debonair, dashing. You know that feeling. Of course, I crawled home,
Yeah. For
but
anybody who doesn't understand that reference, why don't you explain that for even
but
me as well?
oh, you mean about Clint Eastwood?
Yeah.
Well, he kind of became my hero. He was a movie star. He was on Rawhide on TV, and then he did some spaghetti westerns in Italy that were The Good and the Bad, the Ugly was one. A Few Dollars More. Eli Wallach was another.
What's a
They,
spaghetti western? I think I heard about these jokes. And I don't really I haven't looked into it. What is that with these westerns in Italy?
they went to Spain because Spain has same environment, a lot of it that we have in our West. What it was back in the late 1800s. You know, prairies and desert type environments and mountains. It looks a lot like our West. So, and you could get, it was cheap to make movies over there. Clint Eastwood made a ton of movies. He's like 100 years old now.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask how old is it? I feel some actors I feel are like, what was he? Sorry, was he an actor or was he a director? He was a director,
No,
right?
he ended up being a director.
Oh,
He did acting and directors. He actually was acting and directing movies into his late 80s.
yeah. Some actors and directors are just around forever, and then those names obviously just keep on producing quality. So it's very
Yeah,
interesting. But
yeah.
anyway, so leading. Sorry, what was that?
Yeah, if you Google his name, all kinds of stuff will pop up. He's. I thought he was a pretty stand up guy. I mean, you know, he did some stuff, I'm sure, but overall, I think he was a good guy, and he always played the good guy roles. He's one of those. He never did a bad guy role.
Yeah. Well, and then how did he motivate you when you were younger?
I don't know. He didn't really come into the public domain until probably when I was off to college. But so he, when I was 13, I don't even know if he was on Rawhide, but
Hmm.
later looking back, yeah, I knew that was what I felt like anyway. He was,
Looking back, I didn't
yeah.
know if he was a major driving influence to you at the time. So
No, I would have had to be the Lone Ranger or something.
okay. Great. Well, going into the war, mentioning alcohol as a problem, was this something that persisted when being at war with alcohol? Was that something that was prevalent over there, or
Oh
did that
God, no.
take a pause?
No, no,
Yeah.
no. There was very little drinking in Vietnam, at least where I was. I'm sure some of the Air Wings, First Marine Air Wing, probably they had more access to it. They had enlisting clubs and stuff like that. Yeah, when I could, I got drunk, but not very often. It just wasn't available. I mean, we were out in the jungle, man. We were fighting for our
Yeah.
life most
I
of the
mean, I
time.
was going to ask you, what was that like? I haven't, I was in, like I grew up in Canada. I was born in Italy, but I grew up in Canada, since I was 6 months old. So I didn't really get that education. I don't know if that's what they're learning in history in the United States. So, I don't have that background. I would love to hear a little bit about it. What was that like? What was the environment like when you got there? What were the feelings? That's something that you can't even learn in a classroom.
Well, I ended up in the First Marine Division, which was ironic, and they were
And
south and west of Da Nang. Well, north and west of Da Nang, which is in I Corps, the northernmost province of South Vietnam. So we were right below the DMZ. I was all over I Corps and various things, and six bys, trucks, and helicopter. Helicopters were the main workhorse. Jeeps. I mean, I did a lot of stuff. I was a machine gun on a helicopter for a little bit. Had some bad experiences. It was a tough go. At the end, you think I'm not going to get out of here alive. I mean, 59,000 veterans died in the Vietnam War. Probably 25,000 roughly from accidents. I went down in a C-130 that still had it had one engine left working.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and I walked away. There was me and the crew. We walked away from that, but yeah.
Ouch.
I ended up on the USS Repose one time. Came off of that, and then ended up back in the jungle again. So it was
a powerful thing to say. It's almost like half of them were from accidents. Oh my goodness, what an environment!
Yeah, a lot of friendly fire, accidental discharges, all kinds of accidents. I was involved in 2 or 3. I accidentally killed a prisoner at one point. I felt really bad about that because that probably cost some Marine lives. I just didn't pay attention for a second, and that's all it takes, man. It was wow. It was a very dangerous environment, and
yes, that describes the chaos right there. That is chilling. The so many being from accidents, not having the time to think. Who can process fast enough when you're in an environment like that? I've always thought about that.
Yep. The good thing was it almost got me killed 20 times, but then it gave me a career. The last couple of months I was in Vietnam, they made me a second lieutenant. They called them Mustangs in the Marine Corps. In World War II, they called them combat lieutenants. In other words, an enlisted man who could do the job for a month or two, because lieutenants didn't do well in that environment. Just like in World War II, there, you stick your head up a lot more trying to figure out what's going on, type of thing. But and then I was coming back. I was a corporal, and some colonel found me and said, "You're going back. You're a corporal again. So, and you probably get out in a couple of months, or you can go to, you did a good job, kid, for the most part. And if you want to go to OCS, Officer Candidate School, you could be a real officer, and you'd have to re-up for 3 years." And I said, "Well, I don't have any big plans." So away I went.
Wow. And then you became an officer?
I became an officer. I found out at my 50th anniversary of the guys I served with, some of the guys, I was probably the last one without a college education. But then, even more shocking was, so I went through all that officer training stuff, and I decided to go in the Air Wing. So I ended up at 1st Marine Air Wing in South Carolina, Cherry Point.
And by officer, do you mean the officers that I see when I walk around who are protecting civilians, or is this officer in military sense?
In military sense. I was now a second lieutenant in the United States Marine Corps, just like in Canadian. The Canadian armies have had a lot of soldiers serve in Iraq, in Afghanistan,
yes,
with high, mortality rates. Canadian soldiers have contributed a lot of people don't realize a big role. I mean, 100,000 Canadian soldiers fought in World War II.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's been a lot of cooperation between the countries there. I know I almost always see, because they're called peacekeepers here, right? And I almost always see peacekeepers going along with different missions. Maybe I'm referencing that incorrectly, but
no, you're right. You're right. A lot of the military organizations, like in Canada and the United States, they have, sergeants, which would be the equivalent of a sergeant in the Marine Corps, in the military. And at a certain level, they have lieutenants and captains. Mm-hmm. So they have officers just like the military does. Mm-hmm. But I'm talking about being an officer in the United States Marine Corps.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So you would define this as a bit of a career. How long did this go on for, this career in the military?
Well, what happened was I ended up being a JAG officer, Judge Advocate General officer, which is a legal officer. They made me a legal officer.
And this is how it ties into the legal profession. Wow. I actually thought that was a different path. It sounds like it might not be. It sounds
Yeah,
like
what happened was when I got to my duty station in South Carolina with the 1st Marine Air Wing, I would have been probably a forward observer and gone back to Vietnam. But when I got there, I knew the guy that was the officer of the day. He'd been my drill instructor in Parris Island, 2.5 years before that. And now he's a Mustang captain. And he says, after we, hugged each other and, I hadn't seen him in a while. And he said, "Hey, Rand, I got all these schools." And he's rallying them off. And he said something about Newport, Rhode Island. And I said, "Gee, what's in Newport, Rhode Island? Never heard of that. I've never been to Rhode Island." He says, "It's a JAG school, Judge Advocate General School." So he said, "If you want to go, I can type up the orders right now." And 2 days later, I'm in Newport, Rhode Island at the JAG school with 99 captains, Marine Corps captains. Well, some of them were naval, actually. So they would have been ensigns. But, and they had all got a college degree and graduated from law school. They're real, honest to God lawyers.
Wow.
And I'm just this green kid with I got the second lieutenant bar on my shoulder. I'm not even that. I'm 2 grades away from where they're at.
That's inspiring. Wow.
Yeah. And 20 of us out of the 100, we rented a mansion on the ocean because it was the off season. It was real cheap with 20 of us, and we each had our own room. And these guys are partying because they graduated.
That's awesome.
And I thought, you know what, Kevin, I made a smart decision for once in my life. And I thought, I'm not going to drink during the week. I'll just study. Well, guess what? I ended up being the class honor man. I got the highest scores.
Wow. Congratulations. Congratulations. Hey, underdog coming in. So all these gentlemen had educations going into it. They're all wow. And then you're coming out of, boots on the ground, hard-earned position by the sounds of it. And then top performer in the class.
Yep. Then I went back to Cherry Point, and they made me a defense lawyer. I did a couple cases. I got some acquittals, which was unheard of usually. Military trials are not like jury trials in the civilian world.
I was just going to ask, what kind of cases were you dealing with? Military, or was this
military?
Wow. Wow. So I've always been curious what kind of cases come through there, and maybe talk about some of these acquittals. It sounds fantastic.
AWOLs, absent without leave. The worst one I had was sleeping on watch in the Marine Corps. That's a death knell. If you sleep on watch in the Marine Corps and you're an enlisted man, you're out. You're going to go to Fort Leavenworth for 2 years, jail, prison, whatever you want to call it. And you're going to get a dishonorable discharge. That was a big deal. And I took it seriously, and I called some witnesses, and damn, those officers acquitted the guy. And then I had another, very unusual. And then I had another one, and they solved that problem. They made me a prosecutor.
Wow. And so we'll talk about that progression in that career. That sounds fascinating. But wow, how scary that I almost don't even think about that. There's legal consequences to your role in war, and wow, just to think that there's all that chaos going on, and then think about that. You were serving, and then you were in the courts of others who served, and problems there, and that must have been a little challenging at times, was it?
Yeah, it was, but we don't want to overplay it either. Marine Corps, most of the guys are very dedicated and rule followers and all that kind of stuff. So, and we're talking about hundreds of thousands of men, but a small group. The war had a bad effect on many. A lot of the guys came back traumatized. It kind of broke my heart in a way. You'd have a guy come back and he'd have a chest full of medals, real hero. I was not a real hero by any stretch, but some of those guys were amazing, real silver stars, stuff like that. And, but then they'd leave and they go down to Myrtle Beach and spend, for 30 days, get a motel, and they start drinking, and then they end up coming back 34 days. So they're AWOL. And then they'd be court-martialed. We call them Article 32. And the next thing you know, they're PFC. And it was horrible. There was no programs for the veterans from the Vietnam War. When I came back from Vietnam, I spent 3 days and 2 nights in a winter uniform in Okinawa waiting to get on a plane.
Yeah.
And everybody else was getting on the plane except me and the guys that I was with. So that we were sweating in the sun for 3 days and 2 nights before we ever got to LA. Then we get to LA and we went and got our tickets. Here's a bunch of guys right out of the war. 3 days earlier, we were walking around with machine guns and rifles and grenades and bazookas and all kinds of weapons. And now you're in a uniform and you're back in the civilian world. And I got to LA, we got our tickets. Well, then we all went to different gates because we're all going different places, right?
That must be so strange.
Yeah. Well, what happened to me?
A world where there's there's rules, but you are fighting for your life. And then you're coming back to structured society, boarding a plane. Yeah. That must be tough to transfer over to other people in terms of understanding.
Yeah. So I have a standby ticket. I walk to my gate and there's a long line. And I don't know. I just lost the car. I walked to the front of the line, threw my duffel bag on the ground, put the ticket on the counter, and looked at the lady and said, "I'm getting on this plane." Mm-hmm. I was done. I just wanted to get home.
Yeah.
And big guy in the line, probably 6 foot. I'm 5'8". I'm 110 pounds.
Yeah.
I've gone from 148 pounds of, best shape I was ever in my life. I'm basically like, I'm like a Viet Cong. I look like a Viet Cong. I'm brown on my face and my hands.
Yeah.
And I'm skinny as hell and, malnourished and exhausted. And this big 6'4", 250 pound, looked like a linebacker for UCLA or some darn thing, comes up and starts poking me in the chest, telling me to get to the back of the line. And then he made a big mistake. He pushed me hard.
Yeah.
And I stumbled backwards and I grabbed a stanchion there's a line of stanchions with a rope through it to guide you through, right?
Yeah.
And I grabbed the one on the end, pulled the rope out, and I grabbed it like a baseball. I'm going to kill this son of a gun, right?
Yeah.
And the next thing I know, I'm surrounded by stewardesses. The guy's in handcuffs. Police are leading him away. And then they put me on the plane. I'm the first one on the plane in first class. And then the pilot, who's probably 45, comes and sits down and starts talking to me. And it turns out he is a retired Marine Corps aviator.
Mm-hmm. And understands exactly what just happened. Like most of the ladies and gentlemen in the United States today who thank you for your service by allowing you on the flights pre-booked early for that exact situation to not happen, because nobody can understand what it means to go from that situation to this one. You used to have a rifle in that bag and you didn't have one there. And that's something that gentleman did not know, because he's on his way to a business meeting or seeing friends. Different rules apply. So once again, thank you for your service. And that is a story that nobody should be shocked by. And that is one of the areas where I hope, and that's why I asked, how do you feel treated by society? I hope that we have gotten much better with understanding that.
Yeah, it took decades. When we, after that, when we were stateside, if we were going off base, we had to be in uniform. And we would go right to the nearest gas station and go in the restroom, get out of our uniforms, put our civvies on, go home, drive back in civvies, go to that gas station, go in the restroom, put our uniforms back on. We're 100 feet from the gate and go back on the base. Mm-hmm. You didn't dare, in my time, walk around in your uniform. You were just going to get in trouble.
Yeah.
So it was a really bad time. And there was no programs for us. We all were traumatized in one way or another. And we all paid for it later on. I did with nightmares. And then the drinking took off because that kind of helped me, medicate.
Yeah.
So I went through all that.
Because you mentioned you are since on a very positive note, you're a recovering alcoholic, and that has been successful.
Yes. Yeah, it took a while. Yeah. I was determined to be successful. I mean, I liked being a lawyer. I liked helping people. I liked getting paid to help people.
That's always fantastic. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's nothing about you that doesn't strike me as driven, and it's inspiring. And even taking on the opportunities. Look, you top in the class, uh, coming out of war, and look at how I find it so inspiring how you use that opportunity of serving, and you really built a huge and successful career out of this opportunity. And that takes drive, I think, because I don't think everybody could follow that and really take that opportunity. It's a really positive story. And so you were
Yeah.
mentioning that you turned into a prosecutor after that.
Not in the civilian world. I didn't know. I was
Oh,
self-employed from the get-go. And that was interesting too, but I got a lot of breaks. I was lucky. And, I was married. I had 3 kids, and I opened my own office,
wow.
and nobody's coming.
Yeah.
So I was calling up a couple lawyers. I knew, what do? I don't have any clients. I'm going to starve. And
But
they
what
said,
a
well,
position to be in. Everybody, let's refocus here on not having any food, going to sleep at night, having to go into the neighbor's barn for opportunity, and you're opening your own office after that experience. Wow.
yeah. Well, they said in those days, they didn't have public defender officers yet. So what they did was hire, guys like me, beginners, to go to night courts and criminal courts, and they would put you on the assigned attorney list, and then you would get paid to represent indigent people who couldn't afford a lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
But it was $10 an hour out of court and $15 an hour in court, which in those days, it wouldn't even cover my overhead, but I had to do something.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that, and I'm running around to night courts every night, and I'm going to county courts during the day, and I'm helping indigent people. Well, I'm in a night court one night when the judge does something really ridiculous, and he throws a guy in jail who's a correctional officer, and because he squealed his tires on the pavement. It's called a stop violation. STOP, squeal tires on pavement. And all those lawyers are sitting there. The guys have been around for decades, and me, and like, what the heck? Nobody's ever done that. And this lady is crying her eyes out. Turns out it's the CO's mother. So later I found out she was asking other lawyers to help her out, and she didn't have any money or whatever. So I do my cases, and I walk out, and she's still outside crying. And she asked me to help her. And I said, well, yeah, have you got any money? She said, well, not really. Got $5? Because I got to be retained, right? I can't represent. I just can't walk in and say, I'm going to help this guy out. I got to be like a real lawyer. And she said, well, I got $5. Well, give me the $5. And I went back in, told the judge I was retained, and he laughed at me and said, well, if you don't like it, go appeal the case, which we both knew I couldn't do that because you can't appeal a case until it's over with. So the next day, I went to the county court judge's office. I prepared some documents called an order to show cause, saying this was cruel and inhuman treatment, and that judge needs to be corrected. And I'm asking you as his supervising judge to let this guy out of jail, basically, is what I did. So I do all this paperwork. The mother came in, signed it, and I went over there, and not knowing whether it was going to work or not. And then the county judge signed the order. So I went back to the jail and served it on them. They let the guy out. I found out later on I got him out of jail. He went home, put his CO uniform on, and went back to work the same day.
Great job.
Yeah. And then I went and served the paper in the court to the judge. You have to do these things. You have to file it with clerks and stuff like that. So anyway, I go home. Then I go back to my office at work. I go home that night, and I turn on the TV, and there's the judge on TV telling everybody, oh, this young whippersnapper lawyer by the name of Timmerman, he went over my head, and he went to this other judge, and that judge doesn't know what the hell he's doing. He shouldn't be doing this, and that guy's a danger to society, and I was protecting society, and on he went. And then the next night,
it got political. Oh my goodness.
Oh my God, yeah. And So then, it was in the papers. I was on TV. I didn't badmouth the judges or anything. I just said I did what I was supposed to do to prevent somebody who's presumed to be innocent until the process plays out. And I never badmouthed any of the judges.
And what a great case to have that happen. I feel like you've got a very arguable position there. It's very socially understanding and also very legally valid. So
yeah, well, the magic, Kevin, was that my phone started ringing a lot.
I was just going to ask, what was that like for business? And that's this tough story talking about luck and opportunity, and then boom, you've been following your process and your drive, and then things worked out when you and remember, you got asked for $5 to represent somebody, and then it sounds like that turned the phones on.
Well, that was just to get my foot in the door, and he ended up being good pay. It wasn't about the money at that point, but the point was that I did extend myself, and he got out, and the judge ended up sending it to another court, and a year later it was dismissed. So it all worked out, but I got all this free publicity. I couldn't have paid for that kind of.
You couldn't even have set that up.
Yeah, and then here's the funny part, Kevin. Fast forward, I don't know, a decade. And I come into my office. Now I've got all kinds of clients. I've raised my fees over and over.
Are you this hotshot lawyer after that? How does that work after you get all this publicity? I feel like that would be headline news. Wow.
Yeah, I ended up being a top lawyer in that 4-county area. I did a murder case and some other, I had a great career. It was awesome. Hard work, a lot of hard work, a lot of, it wasn't all, most of it was pretty hard. I did some appeals. I would appeal in front of appeal courts. I liked the law.
This is outside of military cases now? So that's...
this is way past all that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I got out of the military in 1970. This is in the 80s and 90s and right up to 2012 when I retired. But let me finish the rest of the story.
Yeah, sorry to cut you off.
No problem. But a decade later, I come into my office, and like you said, I'm on my way. Everything's like working out really good. And I look, and there's the judge's name on my calendar. And I said to my secretary, now at this point, she's been with me like 20 years or whatever. And I said, no, it wasn't that long, 10 years. And so how come the judge is coming to see me? What's that all about? She said, I don't know, but he said it was important. He needed to talk to you. And I'm not out in his court anymore. I'm way beyond that. And so he comes in and sits down and tells me his problem. He's got some real problems.
Oh my goodness. And now he's
and then finally I said, why? I never thought you would come and see me. He says, Rand, I would never trust anybody more than I trust you, and you're a fighter.
Who are you going to trust in the guy who got you on the news complaining?
So it all worked. Oh, amazing.
Wow. So how long was that career as a lawyer?
40 years. Yeah.
Wow. Congratulations. That is a successful life. And we haven't even gotten to some of the exciting parts after that. But wow. What a fighter. Yeah. What a fighter. Literal sense and metaphoric sense. Fighter.
Yeah. I would tell clients when they retain me, I say, look, we're going to be going to court because I'm a litigator. That's what we do. We obviously, if we can settle, we get reasonable, terms, and you're satisfied, that's fine, but we'll fight to the end, whatever it takes. And I would always tell them, I'm like a gunslinger. Okay. So when we go in the OK corral, you don't do anything. You let me, I know what I'm doing. You let me do the fight and you'll be okay.
Literally. I feel like that background would be good for business. Hey, we're going to go to war on this. Like that's pretty. Wow.
Most of the time you don't. I mean, 90% or more get settled out, but you got to fight. You got to come in from a fighter standpoint, in my mind anyway. So then you can do it nicely. You don't have to be an a-hole. I wasn't an a-hole. Most people like me. Judges love me because I made their jobs easier in many ways. I would bring in case law and, I was professional.
Yeah. I mean, being an a-hole probably gets in the way of the client's interests and makes things tougher. So I
was in the field where the most grievances, where clients file grievances with the law, with the grievance committees. Each state has grievance committees for lawyers because a lot of lawyers get grieved a lot. I never had one.
So what area of the law did you specialize? Was there an area where you specialized in your career?
I did pretty much defense work, criminal work, the first 10 or 12 years. And then my daughter got mistreated. I would say it that way. And I was getting to the point where working with criminals all the time is not pleasant.
Yeah.
In many ways. When you start to think the way they think, I didn't like that feeling. I didn't want to. So, and then that happened to my daughter, and I said I shifted gears. I just became a litigator, mostly in family courts, county courts, and in Supreme Court. In New York State, every county has a Supreme Court. So I think there's 64 counties. I can't remember exactly. So every county has a Supreme Court. I ended up doing a lot of litigation in Supreme Courts, contract cases, divorces, all that kind of thing. So I was in court every day, practically. If I didn't go to court on any given day, I would feel weird.
Wow, there's the schedule. I mean, there. But I feel wow, and so glad you mentioned that, because I wouldn't have thought to ask this. That must have given a fantastic structure to follow. After being through such a tough experience like going to war, did that help process that, or did it make it more difficult?
No, I think, that's a very insightful way to look at it. For me, whenever I got to the point where something was really, really hard, I would always say to myself, nobody's shooting at you. So what the hell's your problem?
Oh my goodness. What
I ran 26 marathons. I did a bunch of ski races. I was a weekend warrior type guy. I felt if I was exercising my body hard every day, I could drink as much as I wanted. I never drank during the day, but I would over medicate at night sometimes. And I kind of knew in the back of my mind it was going to be a problem someday. But it really didn't become a problem for me until I got into my early 60s, and then it started to take over. And that forced my hand. I went into a recovery program, but I wasn't willing to do the God thing because I didn't think there was a God. And I didn't realize if you don't think there's a God, then you must think you're God. And I probably had that syndrome, although I hate to admit it. I didn't think I was arrogant, but I did kind of live that way, like I know best, type of thing.
Yeah.
And alcohol is, a lot of people don't realize, but alcohol is a disease. The American Medical Association determined that in 1956. And the reason is because we metabolize alcohol differently. I thought there was something wrong with me morally. Like, what the hell's everything you've had, every challenge you've had in your life, you've overcome it, stepped around it, stepped over it, went beyond it somehow, but you took care of it. You didn't, one way or another. And then the alcohol, I could not understand why I was losing total control.
Wow, what a perspective.
It wasn't Spiritus. See, I did believe in a God. His name was Spiritus, which is Latin for alcohol, and it came in a bottle.
Yes.
And I wouldn't do the recovery program because they said I needed a higher power to stay sober. Well, it turned out they were right. I was wrong. I had a lot of bad ideas. But alcoholics metabolize alcohol, and their bodies create an excess of acetone. And that's what gives the alcoholic that unbelievable obsession and thirstiness. I'd be on an 8 or 9 day bender, not understanding what was happening to me. And I would be as thirsty as I was when I started, and I haven't eaten. I'm a wreck. I'm a total wreck. I couldn't understand that. I woke up the first time in the hospital, and there's a lady sitting there reading a paperback book by the window, and hours go by, and I can't, how did I get it? What the hell? Yeah. And then another lady comes in, and they switch places, and the first one leaves, and the second one's sitting there, and it's been 10 hours, and I can't remember what the hell happened. And then finally I say, why are you here? And she goes, I'm here to keep you company. And I go, oh my God, I'm on suicide watch.
Oh my goodness.
I'm on suicide watch. I remember the first time that happened. And this will never happen again. I will never, ever let this happen again.
Goodness.
It did.
It happened
so
again.
I ended up retiring. I was 67, so it wasn't like a or anything. But
and this didn't derail the career, just to enhance how difficult that is to get off of. This didn't derail your career?
No, I had already retired. When I started struggling in the recovery program, I I knew I didn't want to destroy my reputation, and very few people knew what my struggles were like. I was very introverted. Introverted in that way. And, I wore a bunch of masks. I was good at wearing masks. And I also was scared to death because I knew this was the one thing I could not manage.
Yeah. It sounds like was alcohol around for most of your career as a lawyer, or was that something that you struggled with later?
No, it was later. Okay. I mean, I celebrated a little bit too much once in a while. My kids had no idea what the nature of my problem was. I hid it very well.
Yeah.
I controlled it for a long time. I had the illusion of denial, but in the end, I couldn't. And I knew that when 13, this could happen. I knew it. That's why I decided then I would never do drugs. I never did drugs. Why would I? Well, if I could be Clint Eastwood by taking some booze,
imagine,
I don't need any drugs, right?
Good thing you didn't touch drugs. I mean, look at the successful career you had. So at what age did alcohol become a problem? And then what was the thing that made you get off of it? How did you stop?
Well, I went into a recovery program when I was 65. And then I kept relapsing. I was getting fairly long periods of recovery, like 30 or, 3 months. For 3.5 years, I could get 3 months sober, but I could never make 4 months. I give out what we call chips. And the reason was I refused to do the program. I refused to get a sponsor. I refused to believe in a higher power. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't stay sober. And at the end, I retired in the middle of it because I knew I was going to do something really stupid. You can't keep doing this stuff. It gets worse. It never gets better. And I knew it was horrible. Anyway, at the end, I wrote about this in my book, how I recovered from alcohol, because it's part of my story.
Yeah. That's why I was also touching on it, because I was going to talk about the trail next. And I just wanted to hear what made you decide to quit, or if it was a one realization or if it was a process.
It was a process, but it was a very short process at the end. So I've been in this recovery program for almost 3.5 years. I ended up relapsing 12 times in 3.5 years, and each one got worse, and hospital and detoxes. I went to a rehab for 47 days at one point. And finally, at the end, I just wanted to die. Oof. I couldn't do this recovery program. I was a total failure. And I was on a 7 or 8 day air vodka vacation, what I called them. And I decided to end it. I was just going to, and I'd already tried to commit suicide apparently 3 times. Oof. And, but the problem was it was Saturday morning and it was 7 o'clock and the liquor store didn't open till 9. And I went and sat on a guy's front porch. I have voided myself, Kevin. I look worse than the guys you see under the bridges with the brown bags. I'm in total desperation mode, and I just want to die, but I'm going to do it with alcohol. I'm going to get a gallon. That ought to do it.
Oh, my goodness.
Yep. So I went and sat on this guy's front porch, and he comes out with his fishing pole. His name was Billy Cook. I can tell you now because he's not with us anymore. And he saw me, and he put his fishing poles down and came over and looked at me, and he said, "Oh, I know you. You're just like me." And he sat down next to me, and he asked me what I wanted to do, and I said, "I need help. I need help." He took me to the emergency room. Billy did. Never got a towel or anything to put in his car.
Oh my goodness. If you don't believe in God, that is as close as it gets.
Took me to the emergency room. He could have dumped me out. What's 99.9% of people would have done. But he didn't. He went inside. I'm on the gurney all day long with the tubes in my arms. He's sitting in a chair telling me his story. And he'd walked into. It's a recovery program for alcoholics that like to remain anonymous.
Yeah. And that is Alcoholics Anonymous. Is that program?
Yeah. I'm not supposed to broadcast that because attraction rather than promotion. Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, that's what it was. And turned out Billy had walked into that same program 30 years before and never drank. And he didn't believe in God either. That was the key to it. And he stayed there with me all day long and told me about his story. And I said, and he never drank again. When he walked in the first meeting, he never drank again. The old guys put their arms around him and said, you stick with us, kid, you'll be all right. And he did. And his wife, too, turned out. His whole family was in the program. So anyway, so he sat there all day long telling me his story. And then he came see me in detox every day for 4 days. And then he took me to a meeting, and we're sitting waiting for the meeting to start. And this is in the book, actually. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, what am I going to do now? And I'm thinking, I'll go to 4 meetings a day for the first 2 weeks. And then I'm going to go to the gym every day, too. And then I'll read the big book. They call it the big book. The book that explains how it works and everything. And I'm going to do the same stuff I've always done, Kevin. And Billy looks at me and he said, Rand, if I could have walked through that, if I could have changed myself, I never would have walked through that door 30 years ago.
Wow.
And it just hit me like a rock or a 2x4 upside my head. Because I wanted to change. The whole time I wanted to change. And I just looked at him. I said, I'll do whatever you tell me to do. So that night after the meeting is over with, we're out in the parking lot by ourselves. Finally, he looks at me and he goes, Rand, you need to pray to that God you don't believe in. And I started to balk. And he says, nope, Rand, you need to pray to that God you don't believe in, or you will get drunk again. And honest to God truth, Kevin, I started crying.
Wow.
Because I knew he was telling me the truth. And I said, Billy, I don't even know how to, all this time, all the knowledge I have about alcohol, all the 2,000 meetings, haven't read that book like 5 times. I have no clue how to actually do this.
Yeah.
And he said, will you do that and a few other things and we'll get you through it. Yeah. And I did everything he told me to do. I went through the 12 steps. I had some close calls, but I prayed to that God I came to believe in with all my heart, and he helped me out. And I got through it. And 13 months later, a young guy walked up and asked me if I would be his sponsor. I said, come back tomorrow, because I was positive I wasn't ready, right? Said I needed to talk to Billy, because Billy was getting asked all the time. And he would always tell him, say, come back tomorrow. A lot of times they don't. But anyway, but I had to talk to Billy. So I said, come back tomorrow. And I went and talked to Billy, and I'm telling him what's going on. He said, oh, yeah, mister, go for it. You'll be good. I said, Billy, you're supposed to tell me I'm not ready. And he said, oh, you're ready, Rand. You got lots of bad experience.
Yeah.
It turned out he was right. Yeah, and now you got
support coming through at the best time, literally the best time, and then becoming that support for others.
Yep. So what happened was I have been sponsoring men ever since then, Kevin. Billy knew that I was the kind of guy.
And thank you for that.
If I did the program, I would stand a much better chance of staying sober if I was working with other people. He knew that about me, right?
Yes.
And I have been, to this day, I usually am working with 2 or 3 guys every day. I'm retired now, so I can do that. And it changed my life. I filled with joy every day. And I've had all kinds of problems you wouldn't believe, but it changed my life. So that's part why the book is called A Spiritual Passage. Is because I talk about that, so that hopefully it will help people not only see what these 2 old guys did walking that crazy trail, but what else it did for them in their lives, changed their lives completely.
And podcasts like these, you're a huge motivation to people like myself. Your story and keeping on that journey is something that motivates me. So you're definitely right, and somebody is listening to you. Thank you for that. And I'm sure your book has been quite moving. What a great time to transition to that. Your book written about the trail, was that the one with 500 images in it about the trail?
Yes, I took almost 6,000 pictures. My brother Ron took very few. He was more like, his wife Edie died and left him with 7 grandchildren, 27 great-grandchildren and 30 great-grandchildren. 7 children, 27 grandchildren, 30 great-grandchildren. And here's the funny part about that story, Kevin. Talk about miracles. When my brother was kind of a quiet guy, very religious, never lost his spirituality. I had none, as I talked about before. Came home, and my mother's best friend was Edie. And Edie had 7 kids, and she was divorced. When they went on their first date, Edie showed up with her 3 youngest children. So my brother had instant family. And then Edie got attracted to the Mormon church, so they ended up moving to Utah. My brother became a bishop in the Mormon church, and they had a fantastic life.
That is a big family.
That is a big family. Yep.
That is a big family. I'm still thinking about that.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then in 2011, Edie had a massive stroke, and she ended up the rest of her life in a wheelchair. She lived another 6 years, but she had a bunch of minis. She was one of those stroke victims that they don't get better. She got, it just was very difficult. Ronnie wouldn't let anybody else take care of her. He loved her dearly. One of my favorite moments on the trail one morning, Ronnie was thinking about Edie, and we were talking a little bit before we started out hiking, and he goes, "You know what I like best about my wife, Rand?" And I said, "No, what?" And he says, "Every morning when Edie woke up, she had a big grin on her face. She was always happy. Always happy.
Goodness.
First thing in the morning, she was always happy. Just the new day. Oh my God." I thought, where do you find a woman like that?
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Huge family, and such a beautiful thing to say about your wife.
Yeah. So when she passed in November of 2017. And I had never been out to Utah. I was on the East Coast. Ronnie was on the West Coast. They would come east because half of the kids stayed in the East. Mm-hmm. And so I would see them maybe 1 or 2 days a year. So,
did you grow up together, or did you?
Yeah, no. He was my young. Yeah, I have. Ronnie was a year younger than me. So when we did the trail, I was 72. He was 71. He was in Vietnam before me, but he did 2 tours. So he saw a lot of stuff too. Yeah. I don't think his trauma he handled it better than I did because of his spiritual life, I think. But he suffered too. And, but he really suffered when she died. And I talked to him on the phone. I could tell he was really being challenged. And I said, "What are you going to do?" And he said, "I'm going to hike the Appalachian Trail." Well, I kind of blew it off because I had hiked parts of it before and I knew what it was like. And, but it turned out he'd also done a lot of hiking in Utah. So we were both in really pretty good shape. I told you I ran 26 marathon. We were both weekend warrior type guys. And so we were, even in our early 70s, we were probably in the condition of men in their 50s that have taken good care of themselves. You know what I'm saying? Been active. Yeah. So I went out. I said, "I'll come out and see you." And we were hiking in the desert. And he brought it up again. This is in January of 2018. And he says, "I'm going to hike the Appalachian Trail, bro." And I said, "Really? When?" He said, "March 18th. This year?" I wrote all this in the book. He said, "Yeah." Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, how are you going to do it? He said, "I'm going to take a bus got all my gear. I'm going to take a bus to Springer Mountain, Georgia, and start walking." I said, "That's not a good plan."
He already had it all planned out then.
Yeah, you can do it that way, but it's very difficult because you got to walk down and go to post offices or do something to get your food back. So I said, "Well, I'll tell you what, I'll do it with you."
Wow.
And so we both drove to Springer Mountain. We had 2 vehicles, so it made it a little bit easier for us. And the roads crossing the Appalachian Trail every 10 to 15 miles. Some of them are really crappy, a lot of dirt roads and stuff. But so we were able to, we had 2 vehicles. We parked every night on the Appalachian Trail, wherever a road went across it. And then in the morning, Ronnie would drive down the mountain, go up to the next road and go back up the top. And then he'd walk south and I walked north. We'd meet in the middle. And so that's kind of how we did it. Now, sometimes we had to do a full pack. But we both carried probably a 20-pound pack with water and first aid and stuff like that. A lot of people weren't prepared. Well, we helped a lot of people. There's no water on the top of mountains. A lot of people didn't want to carry much water. Well, that's not a good idea. That's a really bad idea. So we carried extra water because people would be dehydrated. I had a first aid kit and snake kit and stuff like that. A lot of critters. Oh my God, I got pictures of snakes and bears and all kinds of stuff in there. Stories up the yin yang, Kevin. You wouldn't believe some of the stuff.
Oh, I could only imagine. How long did this take in total before we get into it a little bit?
Took 9 months altogether of hiking. It took
9 months?
Yeah, it took us 3 years.
Oh my goodness.
The first year we made it into New Jersey. We did 1,400 and some miles of the 2,200, excuse me. And one day I came out, it was 100 degrees. It was 100% humidity. It was horrible. It had taken me 10 hours to walk 11 miles. And I came out, Ronnie was standing in the parking lot with his hands on his hips. He goes, "You want to go home, bro?" And I said, "Yeah." We both lost 30 pounds. We were out of gas. I mean, it was, so, and I thought we were done. I had taken a lot of pictures. It'd been great what we had done. I mean, that's way more than most people for sure. And then the next spring, Ronnie said, "You want to finish it?" I said, "Sure." So we went back.
Spring, do you want to finish it? Wow, that is a long journey.
Yep. And then in Wilcox Mountain in Massachusetts, I fell down a rock slide. Really banged myself up bad. And oh my God. When I fell, Kevin, I fell about 12, 15 feet on rocks. I closed my eyes because whenever I get in this, even in combat, if I get in a situation where I can't do anything and I'm just, I just close my eyes because I know it's going to hurt. But this hurt beyond anything I could imagine. Oh my God, it was so bad. And then I ended up crawling to the top of Wilcox Mountain because I'm like 30 feet away when I fell down this rock slide. Anyway, I had damaged my hip bad, but I didn't know it. Oh. I'm a stupid son of a gun. Sometimes you can be too tough for your own damn good. You know what I mean?
This is like a water, like one of those natural water slide situations. Is that what that is?
No, it was great big boulders and rocks. It probably 30 degrees. I was almost to the top. I had climbed all the way up.
Yeah.
On the Appalachian Trail, there's rock slides everywhere. I took pictures in the book. Shows a lot.
Oh, sorry, rock slide. I got so off track because I've actually been on like a natural water slide on a hike before, where you go into the pool of water and it's rough. So I thought you took that and you hurt your hip on it because that's actually what happened to me. So
no,
sorry about that. A rock slide. Yes, this makes more sense.
Yeah, I actually bounced once and my left foot got caught wedged between two rocks. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have survived. But anyway, and then I had to walk 9 miles to get the hell out of there. But that's okay because that pain turned into big old ache more than the sharp pain I had at the beginning.
Wow, that's tough to walk out of that after.
Yeah. Well, then we took a month off and Ronnie called me back up and said, "You want to finish it?" So I said, "Okay." We went back. I was in pain, and we got to Mount Washington, and the weather was really bad, and they wouldn't go up there. So we went up. I did Moose Lock and Wolf on the north side of Mount Washington, and we went back to finish it. But by then, I'm in so much pain on my hip I can't even sleep anymore. So I'm not getting that recovery during the night like I was for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
We got partway up and I just turned around. We were in full packs. It's going to take us 3 days. And I just turned around and started crying. I'm not a crier, but I can't do it anymore, bro. I'm done. I can't. So Ronnie finished it with his son, Rick, who had hiked the first 2 weeks in Georgia with us. And then, so Ronnie went on with Rick and they finished it. And I had a hip operation.
Wow. Yeah, you unfortunately can't go through that. It's not like a personal want, but that's tough. How do you get through that?
Yeah. Well, I got a new hip. I'm still walking 7-8 miles a day. Ronnie and I talked the other day, I think on our 10th anniversary, which will be 2028, we're going to do another section just for the old time's sake. But
yeah, and this was done in sections. Then is that how it works? You do a section at a time.
No, ever since we did the whole thing, well, I only did 1,863 miles. Mm-hmm. Ronnie did the full 2,200.
Only did. You say that like it's nothing.
So every year since.
But are you stopping in between and staying in places when you're hiking, or how's the sleeping arrangement and time between certain sections? And
I slept in my tent. I slept in a tent every night on the
Oh my gosh! So you're out there the whole time?
Yeah, but a lot of times my truck's like 50 feet away.
Yeah,
because we're parked on the trail where it crosses a road. So
yeah.
And then there's other, in Smoky Mountains, you have to go 2 sections. They're about 35 miles. So you have to full pack that. We did that in the Priest. There's a place called Priest in Virginia. That's, 40 miles. There's sections there where you have to do a full pack no matter what. But if I had to when we carried a full pack, we averaged 11 miles a day, Kevin. That's a lot in the mountains.
That is a lot.
Yeah, it's incredible. A lot of people, most people cannot even do one day of that.
Yeah.
But,
isn't that a marathon?
No, a marathon is 26 miles, but it's nearly half a mile.
It feels like a marathon.
It feels like 100-miler, my friend.
Yeah. Holy. But it sounds like you and your brother were going through quite a lot when you started this journey. And it sounds like, writing a whole book about this, what's something that you came out of this experience with that helped you continue in the right path or got you in the right path in other areas?
I had a couple life and death experiences on the trail that certainly me and God got real close. Ronnie had some spiritual moments. That's why it's a spiritual passage is the title.
And it's really important considering what you told us about the steps that you took to combat yes. And it sounds like that was a big challenge, and for that to be a positive influence and impact in your life.
Yeah.
I'm interested to hear about that.
I learned a lot about myself. I became a much more spiritual man. I was working with guys the whole time. I would turn my phone on every morning. A couple guys would check in and we would talk about sobriety and stuff. So I was still doing, some work. I did go to rarely, but would go to a real meeting. I did a pretend meeting in my head every day. That's what my sponsor suggested I do. Yeah. I knew the readings we did every day. So I would say them in my head, and then I would do a pretend meeting in my head in a room where I knew everybody and what they would say. And it was weird because it would be the easiest time. That hour I was doing a pretend meeting in my head was the easiest day, because at the end of it, I would go, my watch would say, hey, been an hour. And I'd go, wow, that was the easiest hour of the whole day. Because see, I'm not thinking about the pain and all that kind of stuff. I was, but that is good to keep your mind focused on something else too, and get you through that and be able to log such a fantastic achievement and coming out of that. You said 6,000 pictures along the way. What is some of your favorite images in the book that really tell a huge story? There's a lot of pictures of the vistas are just unreal. Some days I would take 50, 60 pictures. I'd come around a corner. I go, oh my God, look at that. It would be so beautiful. And, just the whole idea of a creator that made all of this because something had to make it,
Wow. That is a perspective right there.
Yeah. And
that's beautiful.
My impression of God got way bigger. He got huge, unbelievably huge, and that made
that is actually such a beautiful visual to want to take a look at the book. If you could remind people, because that was just a beautiful image right there of how is that created naturally? Who made that?
Exactly.
What is the book of where people can see those images?
Well, like I said, if you Google it, a spiritual path, it pops right up.
Okay.
Or you can go to my website, rand.timmerman@gmail.com. And actually, if you Google my name, it'll pop up.
Fantastic.
The way we did it, Kevin, it's in a journal format. So every day that we hiked, it tells you where we were, where we went, how far we went, elevation changes, and then it has the best 4 or 5 pictures that I took on that day.
Oh,
So
that's exciting. That's a smart format.
Yeah, so a person who's in a wheelchair or whatever can actually kind of read that and look at the pictures. They will get some idea what it's like to hike the Appalachian Trail.
Go along with it with you so they can have that experience in a way that's accessible to them.
Yeah, and then I wrote about my spiritual journey in that alcohol recovery program. So that lays out how I did each step and what Billy helped me do and how he got me through the things that I was stubborn about not wanting to do and things like that. It's very, actually, Kevin, I had one of the hosts after we got done talked to me for, oh my God, he just went on and on about his father was a police officer, was having a horrible drinking problem. And I said, well, tell me his address and I'll send him the book. And he said, well, I don't know. And then a month later, he emails me, he said, Rand, yeah, you can go ahead and send the book to my dad, but don't tell him I had anything to do with it. Okay. So that's why he was hesitating. So I did that. I sent the book and I said something like, I hope this helps you with your difficulties. Happy trails. Sign my name, sent it to him. Didn't hear anything for probably 6 weeks, something like that. And all of a sudden I got one email from his dad. And he says, I don't know why you sent this to me, but I liked it. And I think I'm going to do something different.
Wow.
I thought, man, right there, just that one thing makes it
worth that one person makes it worth the whole book.
Yeah.
Whole trail.
Yeah.
Whole life for some people. Oh my
if you
goodness.
can change one life, let alone, I'm sure I've changed a lot more than that, but I don't know. Most of the time we don't.
I know that for sure from your service to your country and also to people. Just think of being the person to say yes. You're taking on $5 from somebody and going to court and getting a man free. Right? There's another example. So, wow. What an experience. And I don't want to ruin those images because I know that they're there and that's what somebody else can experience by listening to this. Go and check out the book. Go along with that trail experience. I'm sure that is just going to be a wild experience, knowing how you mentioned that spirituality was actually a challenge to you before. And you're mentioning you and your brother were very different in terms of spirituality, and this brought you close to it. So interesting. Those images must be very powerful. Thank you so much for sharing these stories. I'm really happy that I got the background at the start because that just made it so much more powerful. How impactful that trail was to you, and yes. So and how are you doing now?
I'm doing good. I mean, I'm very involved and I'm actually publishing another book. I have a couple more in the works. I mean, I'm 80 years old, Kevin. I'm just
you don't look like it. You don't look like it, and you're saying you're getting started, and I agree more with that than saying you're getting old. So
yeah. So I feel very blessed, very lucky, and I have a lot of appreciation and gratitude, man. One step at a time, we can do almost anything.
Yes.
And you don't have to hike the Appalachian Trail to make big changes or improvements in your life. Just get a positive attitude and go for it.
One step at a time, and lucky breaks come along. And this man right here, Rand Timmerman, is the definition of that. So keep taking those steps in the right direction and get yourself better. So thank you so much for sharing your story, showing the people that it's possible. There's multiple examples of that. Alcohol was just a small example. Just think about the example of coming from nothing and that successful career, taking that opportunity. If you didn't take those steps there, what would happen? So thank you so much for coming on. And it was a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you so much. Have a fantastic rest of the day. I'm sure our audience very much appreciates listening to you. Have a fantastic day.
Thank you, Kevin.